Welcome on in. Belly up, have a seat, grab a drink as we talk some Wingman Fantasy Football. Welcome on into another edition of Wingman Fantasy Football, the League Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Furley, and as always, I'd like to thank all of you, or any of you who may be watching or listening to today's show. It is Wednesday, November 5th. This is episode 188, and we go back in time for the Week 9 Rewind. In this show, we will close the books on Week number 9 and transition into Week number 10. We'll start off with some player news. We'll recap Week number 9 of the Wingman Fantasy Football League. We'll check in on the updated standings, take a gander at our Goose-o-meter, strap in for a self-hating Mike Rant. We take a glance at some waiver wire and free agent targets. We're going to play a little game I like to call Please Hold or Time to Go. And we'll let you know who's on top of the current Wingman Jam Standings and who took the high score for Week number 9. We'll also preview the Thursday night game where the Las Vegas Raiders are looking to raid and pillage as they head into Denver to take on those Denver Broncos. But before we do any of that, let's make sure that everybody is in the room. Wingmen assemble! All right, now that everyone is here, man, the theme for this past weekend was some old QBs, had some record-breaking days. We had some players tick every stat box, every stat imaginable in their wild, and we had some wild finishes at the buzzer for multiple games in Week 9. All right, guys, now it is time to get into some player news. All right, starting off with the bad here, guys. We had Jaden Daniels suffered a dislocated elbow in the Sunday night game, pardon me. The good news here is there are no fractures in that elbow area, which means the sophomore QB has a chance to return later in the year. But with the Commanders' playoffs hopes on life support, I would doubt that he ends up making it back onto the field, at least during the fantasy football season. Another bad news here as Tucker Kraft was diagnosed with an torn ACL, and his breakout season has now come to an end.
Oh, no.
All right, now for other players here, we had C.J. Stroud, who was knocked out of the last game with a concussion, and at the moment is not expected to clear the concussion protocol in time to play in Sunday's Week 10, meaning that Davis Mills is expected to make the start for the Houston Texans. Marvin Mims, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, missed last week with a concussion, was able to get onto the practice field early this week on Tuesday, which is a good start to help him have a chance to get through the concussion protocol. But do keep in mind the Broncos are playing on Thursday night, so there's less time for him to get through those benchmarks. Although at this point, there's a decent chance that he will make the return for the Thursday night matchup against the Raiders. Pardon me. Brian Thomas Jr., who suffered that ankle injury in Week 9, was forced out of the game, but there is a optimism that he will be able to play in Week number 10. But it is a little too early to know for sure, so keep an eye on the practice reports for Brian Thomas Jr., and we'll let you know the updated status as we go over our Friday show. All right, guys, unless you were unaware or not, yesterday was the trade deadline in the NFL, and we had some movement. Most of these were defensive players that were moved, but we did have a couple receivers who switched teams here. Jacoby Myers was traded from the Las Vegas Raiders to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That kind of muddies up the receiving core there a little bit. Not sure if he's going to be able to get on the field this week, if he needs time to acclimate. But with the Brian Thomas Jr. being banged up and Travis Hunter being placed on the IR, there's a decent chance he will get on the field and be one of the top 2 or 3 targets. All right, the New York Jets traded away 2 of their better defensive players, with Sauce Gardner going to Indianapolis Colts in exchange for Adonai Mitchell, receiver, and some picks, while the defensive tackle Quinnen Williams, also from the Jets, was also moved to the Dallas Cowboys. Staying with the Jets here for a little bit, we had Garrett Wilson, who was out before their bye week this past week. They haven't had an official practice yet, but the reports are that he is expected to practice this week, and he should return, although, again, we're going to update those practice reports on Friday to get you a better idea of his status going forward. Staying with the Jets, we've got a lot of Jet news for For a team that no one cares about, we have to keep track of these guys. All right. At the moment, they are not naming their starter using competitive advantage Aaron Glenn is using before he dictates a starter. Going into that last game where they actually got the win, thoughts were that they were going to switch over to Tyrod Taylor, but due to him being out due to injury, Justin Fields was the starter and played pretty well in a victory, so we're not sure which way they're going to lean here. But keep in mind, they're not going to tell us until very late in the week, so we're not sure which Jets quarterback is going to make the start. All right, another player that was traded, Rashid Shaheed, was traded from New Orleans to Seattle. Remember, we have Cooper Kupp, who is banged up. There hasn't been any updates on his practice reports or availability going into this week here. He had that hamstring injury that kept him out of this past week. So Rashid Shaheed might also get on the field, and this might mute some of our upside for Torrey Horton, who had a great breakout day last week, but nonetheless, we'll have to keep an eye on that. All right, going over to Arizona, Jacoby Brissett will take over the starting quarterback role for the near future here. The reports are by the coach is that Kyler Murray will get the job back when he's healthy. But who determines who's if he's healthy or not? The coach will determine if he's healthy. So they're going to ride with Jacoby Brissett until it doesn't make sense, as he's really unlocked some of their offense, as they've had three of their more prolific yardage games, even though they're 1-2 while Jacoby Brissett has been at the helm here. Although their 2 losses were to 4 points or less to 2 of the top teams in the NFL. All right, Browns wide receiver Kinshawn Junkins, he left the last game in week 8 with a shoulder injury. They were on bye last week, so we don't have a lot of news here, but he was seen on the early optional practices this week, which means this is a great sign that he will return to the field, which might mute some waiver wire pickups in case we were looking for some backup for Junkins. Not guaranteed he's going to play, but the fact that he's already on the practice field this early in the week is a good sign. In a similar fashion, we had Saquon Barkley was forced out of the game in week 8. They too was on bye this week, so we don't have any big-time news with here yet until Thursday because they don't play till Monday night, but he's listed as day-to-day, and at the moment, he is not expected to miss any time. He should be on the field, although we're going to have to keep track of that later in the week. Like I said, with them not playing until Monday night, we won't really know any official practice reports till late Wednesday or Thursday of this week. Amarian Hampton, rookie running back for the LA Chargers, who missed the 4 games required since being placed on the IR. However, it's been reported that he won't be activated this week, and it looks like they're going to hold him out until at least after the Week 12 bye. So there's a chance he's going to miss another 2 to 4 weeks. We'll just keep you posted as this one goes, but he's not expected back over the next 2 to 3 weeks as they don't have a bye until Week 12. Travis Hunter, this was weird. He was limited in one of the practices last Wednesday, ended up going on the IR Friday morning just after we recorded. He was placed on the IR with a knee injury. It was reported as a non-contact knee injury, which is always a scary combination of words. However, initial reports are showing that his knee is intact. Just a scare, I guess. Obviously, I wasn't there. So at this point, it's being reported that he should get back soon after his 4-game absence. We're not sure if it's going to be 4 games, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, but nonetheless, he is not done for the season, at least as of this point. Brock Purdy, we've heard this song and dance many times before. He may return in Week 10. However, like I said, we've heard this same optimist for weeks now at this point. And also, Coach Shanahan said that he probably won't be full strength all season. I'm assuming as long as Mac Jones keeps them in the win column, they're going to keep riding that arm right there and give Brock Purdy as much time to heal if he gets back on the field at all. Staying in San Francisco, we have Brandon Ayuk will not have his practice window open this week again, meaning it'll be at least another 2 to 4 weeks at the earliest before that Pro Bowl receiver could return. He was my IR draft selection on draft day, expecting to get him back between weeks 8 and 10, and we're already past that, and with no early return in sight. I don't know, guys. Should we drop him or hold on to him? We'll ask that question a little later in the show. All right, this one might hurt. One of our managers here is one of the best kickers in the league and one of the most fun in terms of our sound drops. Kai May Fairbairn is dealing with a lower body injury. It's very unspecific, and at the moment they're saying his availability is in doubt, at least in question, going into Week 10. We're going to have to check on that news, as that is a big-time kicker. And that offense isn't good enough to just plug and play the backup kicker on that team, in my opinion, especially with C.J. Stroud out. So our managers with Fairbairn are going to have a backup plan ready to go in their minds and might have to implement that backup plan by Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. All right, guys, it is now time to go back in time as we do the Week 9 Rewind.
Let's go back. Week 9 Rewind.
All right, guys, let's start off with our rewind as we go over the matchups in our Wingman Fantasy Football League. Our first one here is Ken's, the Fantastics, up against Michael's Amazing Spidey. Both these teams came in at 4-4, both of them just outside the playoff line going into this week. And this was our closest game of the week at just under a 6-point differential. And this was also our two of our lower scoring teams this week. The Fantastics took this one out in an awful matchup, really, at 68.12 to Amazing Spidey's 62.16. Amazing Spidey, this was the lowest score of the week. And Amazing Spidey, who started off the year at 1-4, was on a 3-game winning streak to get to 4-4. Unfortunately, this ends that 3-game winning streak. All right, on to our next game. We have Nick's Waddle Away up against Alex's They Took Our Jobs. And Nick's Waddle Away took this one down at 80.75 to 67.46. Waddle Away came into this one at 3-5, while They Took Our Jobs came in at 4-4. And now they come out of this week both at 4-5. Unfortunately for Alex's They Took Our Jobs, this is his third loss in a row. All right, our next game here had a pair of players in the topper half of our standings here, as Brian's under 40 came in at 5-3, while Bernie's team B came in at 4-4. And Brian's under 40 took this one 98.32 to 83.91. This is Team B's. He's now lost 5 out of his last 6 games. This has been a tough go here. Bernie's team B started the season out at 3-0 rather, and now he's fallen to 4-5. All right, this was a battle here of our teams in the bottom of our standings here. Andrew's Crazy Fish up against Reggie's Lion Eyes. Crazy Fish started the year at 0-5, but he got his 4th consecutive victory, taking this one down 90.35 to 83.19. And Andrew's Crazy Fish is rolling. With one more win to get back to 500, he is close to getting that turnaround season. Unfortunately for Reggie's Lion Eyes, this is not the first time this has happened. This is the second time this year where he's had a 4-game losing streak.
You're as cold as ice.
All right, guys, now it's time to get into our featured games where we dive in a little deeper to see how they got to these scores here. All right, our first one was a big matchup. Where is it? Here we go. We had Katie's King George up against... Hold on, I'm glitching here. Katie's King George up against Jimerson's Red Sox Nation. King George Scattaboo came in at this one at 5-3, while Red Sox Nation came in at 3-5. And guys, this one was this one an upset? No, that wasn't an upset, but we had our highest scoring team this week as King George Scattaboo. After missing Cam Scattaboo to the season injury, she rebounded quite well, getting 132.25 points to Red Sox Nation 104.37. Katie's King George Scattaboo was the highest scoring team of the week. This was also her second win of the in a row. And unfortunately for Red Sox Nation, he was the highest scoring loser of the week.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
All right, let's see what players helped Katie's King George Scattaboo get to the highest score of the week. She had some big-time players this time as Brock Bowers. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Brock Austin Bowers.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
In his first game after missing 3 games, scored 37.3 points as he got in the end zone 3 times. And she made a great deal in this trade, picking up Justin Herbert as he scored 29.7 points, and Herbert is on fire.
He's on fire.
With the loss of Scadaboo, she needed to turn to a new young running back, and she had Kyle Monangai ready to play, put him right into her lineup, and he came through with 21.3 points. And the great Bijan.
Pardon me, would you have any Grey Poupon?
Bijan Robinson came in with a modest 13.6 points to get back on that top performer list. She had no duds in her lineup with a high score like that. And she even had a player on her bench who could have maybe helped out just a little bit, as Quentin Johnson, coming off his Goose from last week, rebounded quite nicely with a 13.3 game, albeit on the bench. Katie's King George Scadaboo made it through the week without any new injuries. Now, unfortunately, Red Sox Nation got the loss, but he had a really high score of over 104 points. So let's see what players helped him get to that impressive score. Starting off with his quarterback here, Josh Allen at 28.82 points.
He's heating up.
Rashee Rice at 16.6 points.
He's on fire.
It's his third game back since suspension, and he's been a top performer all 3 games. Jaylen Warren has been really good this year, although he hasn't strung them in back-to-back games, but had 16.1 points. And surprisingly enough, guys, Michael Pittman Jr. for the Indianapolis Colts came through with 16 points, and this is his 3rd consecutive game as a top performer.
He's on fire.
And his stream of the week.
We'll cross the streams.
Excuse me, Egon. You said crossing the streams was bad.
Red Sox Nation picked up Parker Washington, put him in his lineup, and he came through at 13 points. All right, again, this game was such a high score. There were no duds for Red Sox Nation either, and he had a couple players on his bench. It wouldn't have been enough to take this one down, as he lost by close to 30 points here, or 28 points. But he did have some strong players on his bench, as well as Jackson Dart has been really awesome ever since he's gotten the call up here. He had 27.24 points. He has scored 19 or more points in every start this season. And the Pittsburgh defense had a strong showing at 11 points this week. All right, now it's on to our next featured game here. We have Cubert's Rage up against Corey's May Daddy 2s. And going into this one, May Daddy 2s was projected to win by over 20 points. But I have to say, guys, we had an upset.
Average Joe's wins in a shocking upset.
I feel shocked.
Not only was this one our biggest projected point spread, it ended up being the biggest point spread of the week in the other direction, as Paul's Cubert Rage scored a whopping 128.82 points to another strong day by Corey May Daddy 2s, who had 98.8 points. So like I said, this was the biggest blowout of the week.
You got knocked the fuck out, man.
At just over a 30-point differential. After an 0-3 start for Cubert's Rage, he has now won 4 out of his last 5, improved to 5-4. Corey's May Daddy 2s, who came in at 5-3, has fallen to 5-4. So these guys are now tied into that playoff chase here. All right, let's see what players helped Paul's Cubert Rage get this monster score. Starting off with his number 1 pick of his first round pick, Christian McCaffrey came through with 31.8 points. And T. Higgins, in a wild game with Cincinnati against the Bears, had 29.6 points. And the kicker, Kaime Fairbairn, for the 2nd straight week, got on this list at 18.3 points.
He's heating up.
He was the only player to score for the Houston Texans, as he had 5 field goals, and it was time for that Care Bear stare.
Care Bears stare!
With all these high-scoring outputs this week, another manager without a dud in his starting lineup, and he did have one very strong player on his bench, as Dalton Kincaid came through with 19.1 points, but on the bench. Now for injuries, he had Matthew Golden, who has moved to his bench, so it's not a huge injury in terms of his lineup here, but he suffered that shoulder injury during the last game. Right now, he is listed as day-to-day. All right, May Daddy 2s had another strong performance at 98.8 points. Wasn't good enough, but he did have some strong players help him get to that score here, as Jackson Smith and Jigba keeps chugging along. He might be the best receiver in terms of stats this year, as he has not missed a game, had 18 points. Jamison Williams, rebounding off a couple of duds, had 14.6 points. Jamar Chase keeps it going, as he's been on fire here with Joe Flacco. For the 4th consecutive game, has been a top performer at 14.1 points. James Cook came through with 13 points.
He's heating up.
And kicker Chad Ryland for the Arizona Cardinals has been steady all year long at 11.2 points. He's on fire.
He's on fire.
Another manager who's played the nearly perfect lineup with no duds in his lineup. Although he could have had another point and a quarter if he would have had a different kicker in, as Michael Badgley was on the bench with 12.5 points. Now for the injuries here, it's a big-time player. We're not sure the severity at this point. Puka Nacua left the game with a chest/ribs injury. The reports are optimistic that it's day-to-day, and he's hoping not to miss any time. He's a tough guy who can handle playing with some bruised ribs. So nonetheless, we got to keep an eye on the availability. Oh, no, Puka Nacua is not on his team. That's not the right player. I apologize on that. Puka Nacua is not on Corey Maydaddy's 2's team, so he made it through the week without any major injuries. All right, on to our next game, and this is where we'll mention Puka Nacua here. We had Jeff's Always Right coming in at 6-2 up against Ben's Go Gators, who's been the hottest scoring team, as he had, going into this, 3 of his last 4 games over 128 points. But that scoring stopped, as Always Right is back on track, as he had 100.9 points, defeating Ben's Go Gators, who had 74.47. After the victory, Jeff's Always Right is the only team to move to the 7 wins at this point at 7-2, while Ben's Go Gators fell to 5-4. All right, let's see what players helped Jeff's Always Right get to this victory. Like I said, Puka Nacua, welcome back after missing a game and a half.
Welcome back.
Puka Nacua had 19.3 points.
Hakuna Matata.
And it seems like the air game plays better with Jacoby Brissett, as Marvin Harrison Jr. made the top performer list, getting 19.1 points. Steady as always, Josh Jacobs came through with 18 points even, and Kareem Hunt at 12 points.
He's heating up.
Another manager without any duds in his lineup, as he played the nearly perfect lineup, although he did pick up a late week free agent who would have been his best quarterback on his roster, although he was on the bench this week, as Jacoby Brissett had 24.84 points.
He's on fire.
And this is where Puka Nacua falls into the injury status here. Again, we already mentioned here, chest ribs injury listed as day-to-day. And it seems like for the most part, Always Right goes where Puka goes, as 2 of his losses came when Puka was out and left the game early. So this is actually a pretty big injury, as Always Right has a good team, but a top-heavy team, unless Marvin Harrison and Jacoby Brissett can keep this stack going. All right, now Ben's Go Gators, who've been having monster scores, this time fell back down to earth at that 74.5 points. He only had 1 player in his top performer list, and that was Sam Laporta at 18.7 points. And he had a couple of duds, including his starting quarterback, Jordan Love, at 11.02 points. And Dookie Metcalf had only 1.6 points. And there was no one on the bench who could have helped Go Gators, although he did make it through the week without any major injuries. All right, guys, now that all of the games are in the books, let's take a gander at our updated standings. All right, we had a lot of movement here, but not on top. Always Right and Under 40 are still atop their divisions. So Always Right is the only team at 7-2 atop the odd division, and Under 40 stays atop the even division. But this is where we had some big-time movement, as Katie's King George Scattaboo jumped from 5 to 3. Cubert's Rage jumped from 7 to 4. Maydaddy 2's falls down 1 spot. Go Gators had one of the biggest drops this week, dropped from 3 to 6. Fantastics moves up a spot just out of the playoff line now that he has a winning record into that 7th spot, which is the line for our playoffs. And although Team B is our overall scoring leader with this losing record now and losing, 4 out of his last 5 or 4 of his last 5, he has now fallen to 8th and out of the playoffs, although he has the most points. Amazing Spidey luckily stays in the same spot. Man, this win would have been huge, as that would have catapulted me into the playoff line. Nonetheless, we're going to hold tight here at 9. Crazy Fish moves up 2 spots to 10. They took our jobs, falls once down to 11. Waddle Away moves up a spot to 12, while Red Sox Nation drops 2 spots to 13. And Lion Eyes, unfortunately, in his familiar place in the basement, in 14th place. All right, guys, this week, and now it's time to take a gander at our updated Goose-O-meter.
I'm just goosing along.
All All right, guys, we did add one more Goose this week. We are now up to 13 Gooses total, although we have a new person to make the list this time is under 40. Had Rome Odunze in that shootout. I can't believe the highest scoring of the Chicago-Cincinnati game that Rome Odunze came down with 0 points. This is his first Goose of the season, and now we are up to 13 Gooses. All right, guys, it is now time to strap in for this week's Mike Rant.
Baby Rant. Karen Rant. Monty.
I don't care whose fault it is. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think.
Mike Rant.
This rant is pointed inwards. This one I'm ranting about myself, guys. I had such arrogance after the previous week having my highest score of the season at about 135 points, playing in some backups as we had some injuries. I thought I could put anybody in my lineup, and I probably could have, but not the lineup I chose this week. I didn't listen to my own advice. I went with Emmanuel Wilson, thinking that he was going to get some sneaky carries against the Carolina Panthers, but that game went sideways fast. I could have played almost anybody. I could have even played Amari DiMercato, who was out there, who only had 9.5 points, but me losing by just 6 points, less than 6 points, all I would have needed was an 8.5 point score this week. I also mentioned Colston Loveland out there. I was talking him up, and I didn't follow my own advice, would have crushed it. I also had players on my bench out there that I could have easily put in. Could have put Joe Flacco in there once again as he outperformed Drake May. And I was afraid to double dip with RJ Harvey. And it seemed like the right move at first as this guy just gets 4 or 5 touches, but he finds his way in the end zone. And I easily could have won with almost any other decisions than what I ended up making. And even ones I suggested to you guys out there. If I would have followed my advice I gave to you, I would have had another victory and been inside that playoff line. All right, guys. All right, now it's time to look at some waiver wire targets heading into week 10. All right, our first quarterback on the list here is Jacoby Brissett. Was picked up on Monday in our league, but if he's still out there in your league, guys, he's been named the starter. I'm not saying he's going to keep it for the whole year, but he has unlocked some of the offense here, especially the passing game and especially Marvin Harrison Jr. He's had multiple, like I said, he's on fire in his 3 starts. He's had over 19 points in every single game since being on the field. They're playing against Seattle this week, and we saw Seattle can score quick, and Arizona's probably going to have to keep up in that game. J.J. McCarthy coming back after a long absence here. He played better than his stats were there as they get a big win against Detroit. They're playing another tough matchup against Baltimore. Nonetheless, another young quarterback who can use his legs here to maybe increase some of his points here. All right, Marcus Mariota. I finally watched him play a couple weeks ago, and he is not good for the Commanders, but he runs just enough. He's going to vulture a touchdown or two. He's going to start for the next, I don't know if Jaden Daniels comes back at all, so he's going to start for the next 3 to 6 weeks, if not longer. Marcus Mariota is a streaming option at this point, but against the Detroit Lions, I don't love it as I think the Lions can dominate this game. However, they are going to score points, and the Commanders are going to have a lot of garbage time. Whether they can take advantage of it is another question. And with C.J. Stroud out this week, again, not a big-time play, but Davis Mills will get the start playing against Jacksonville. We saw I don't trust Davis Mills, but they do have some good targets here in Nico Collins and Christian Kirk, along with Woody Marks, can take a screen pass to the house at any time here. And they are playing Jacksonville. We just saw Geno Smith go ham against. So if you're desperate, Davis Mills might be someone you could play on a 1-week rental here. All right, now for some running backs. We've got a big mix of players here. Some of these guys might be gone, but we're going to mention them just to be safe. All right, we have Amari DiMercato for the Arizona Cardinals. It kind of depends on the game script here. My co-host Bernie mentioned that the Arizona Cardinals cannot run the ball. And with Bam Knight being the start of the week last week and failing against a plus matchup against Dallas, and Amari DiMercato, who usually does pretty well in his limited touches, he's going to be in the game more, not more than Bam Knight, but more than he would be normally, as they're going to be down in a lot of these games, and he is the pass-catching running back in these games. He's going to have a chance to take screen passes for 10 to 12 yards a couple times a game. If he gets in the end zone, he's going to be a decent play here. Terrell Jennings, this was the New England running back. We have no updated reports on Ramondre Stevenson, so I don't know if he's going to miss any more time. Stevenson missed last week. We thought Trayvon Henderson would get the bulk of the carries, and once again, he split the work with a different running back this time. This time, it was Terrell Jennings, and even though it was a small sample size, Jennings was the running back to get the only inside the 5 carry. He did not score on it, but nonetheless, small sample size. They're playing against Tampa Bay. Not a great matchup for power running here, but nonetheless, those running backs for New England have, over the course of the year, been a decent, not an automatic play, but Ramondre Stevenson has had multiple good games. Terrell Jennings might have a chance to do that as well. This guy should be picked up, and he was awesome last week. Kyle Monangai. We don't know the status of DeAndre Swift at this point, but they're playing another plus matchup against the New York Giants. Monangai has definitely earned the 50% at least, and with last week's game, I think there's a good chance they're going to let DeAndre Swift get fully healthy before he makes it back onto the field. All right, we've got some shakeups here in New Orleans here. The running game's been pretty atrocious, and Alvin Kamara has been the leader of that atrociousness. Devin Neal is still up there as a handcuff slash splitting carries here. Not a prolific player at this point, but if a lot of these guys are gone, Devin Neal is a running back that is only a snap or two away from being the main ball carrier. All right, the news is not good for these two last guys. These are our handcuffs that we talked about going into the bye week last week with Tank Bigsby appearing to be the new backup to Saquon Barkley. He does have that groin injury. Reports are optimistic that he will play, but there's always a chance for an aggravation or missed time here. And Tank Bigsby, it might be one bad play away from being the bell cow for the Philadelphia Eagles. And Dylan Sampson behind Kinshawn Junkins, who we started off with good practice reports. Again, they're going to be behind in most of these games. He is the pass-catching style of running back. Even with Judkins, he might be getting some third down play here as a flex. But if Judkins misses any time, again, game script-wise, that's going to work out well. And they're playing the New York Jets, so they shouldn't be getting blown out. I don't mean blown out where they might be behind to do passing plays, but you don't want them blown out where they just give up like we saw the Washington Commanders this last game just not do anything. All right, now for some of our receivers we're looking at here, we've got a Torrey Horton. Even I mentioned he was a good pickup once we saw that Cooper Kupp was going to be out last week. I didn't follow my own advice. Torrey Horton, after a breakout performance last week, is playing against Arizona this week. Although I'm not sure about the status going forward for Cooper Kupp. They have not updated any injury reports for him. And they did acquire Rashid Shaheed here. So again, the opportunity he had last week might not hold on, but there is also a chance it could hold on for at least another week or two. All right, we had Kayshon Boutte left last game with a hamstring injury. Right now he's listed as day-to-day, so we're not sure if he's going to miss any time. However, if he does, we have Demario Douglas has stepped up nicely in that role. They're playing against Tampa Bay. I like this matchup much better for the passing game than I do the running game. Demario Douglas should be a player to look at for this week. Cedric Tillman, Browns wide receiver, is coming back. I don't know if it's official, but he's trending towards coming back. And again, they're playing the New York Jets, who just traded away Sauce Gardner, just traded away their defensive tackle. This was already a pretty good matchup going against the Jets, and it's only going to be easier. We've seen that Jerry Jeudy is not the man this time around. Cedric Tillman hopefully can take that number one receiving option here as he is soon to return for the Cleveland Browns. Darius Slayton against the Chicago Bears, the deep threat here, and we saw T. Higgins catch multiple bombs against the Chicago Bears last week. If Jackson Dart can get the ball deep down the field, Darius Slayton should be the beneficiary of that style of game. All right, we have Colston Loveland against the New York Giants. Honestly, guys, I think he was a one-week play last week. I think that was a matchup play against Cincinnati Bengals, although he has earned the right to at least be a stash on the bench, but I would not look to play him, although this is a decent matchup against the Giants, but you're just picking him up because he had such a good game last week. All right, with the injuries here to Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, again, we're not sure of his status going into this weekend as of yet. It seemed to me, though, that Marcus Mariota seemed to connect more often with Chris Moore, especially now that Luke McCaffrey is on the IR with a broken collarbone. Chris Moore, and we've already Jalen Lane, although we've seen Jalen Lane make a lot of mistakes and drop balls. Chris Moore is their steady type of third receiver here. Not a big-time player, but again, these games are going to be, the Commanders are going to be behind in every game going forward here. There's a chance Chris Moore might settle into a possession-type receiver role. All right, now for some kickers we're looking at. Chase McLaughlin was dropped in our league, the Tampa Bay kicker, in a high-powered offense against New England this week. He should definitely be picked up by somebody. We'll see how he does. Cairo Santos for the Chicago Bears has been quite good since his return after missing a game or two due to injury. They're playing the Giants this week. This one should be another decent shootout here. Obviously not as crazy as last week's Cincinnati game, but again, this one should be trending towards that ilk here, maybe a 32-27 type of game. And Ryan Fitzgerald, the rookie kicker for the Carolina Panthers, up against New Orleans. So we're thinking this game shouldn't get away from Carolina. Field goals will be just as valuable as touchdowns in terms of just getting points on the board here. So there's a good chance he will get a couple kicks and have a chance to have a decent day. Except for one or two duds, he's really been quite good for Carolina this year. So keep that in mind. All right, now we're looking at some defenses this week. All right, this one, it always seems to happen this way, guys. We just picked the game with two awful teams, and we're willing to play either defense in this matchup. We got the New Orleans Saints versus the Carolina Panthers, or the Carolina Panthers versus the New Orleans Saints. We saw how bad these guys are both due for interceptions, sacks, and fumbles, as both these quarterbacks are not very good, and there's a chance for some spastic play. This defense here should probably already rostered, but they were on bye last week. If you can get a hold of the Cleveland Browns, do it. They're playing against the Jets this week. We're not sure which quarterback it is, but like we said, except for the last game for the Jets, they give up tons and tons of sacks. And the Cleveland Browns are one of the best teams at sacking. There's going to be at least 6 sacks in this game, guys. Cleveland Browns are a smash play, and if you can get them off the waiver wire or free agent list, do it. All right, if we're going to pick up these teams or these players, we have to drop somebody. So now it's time to play a game I like to call Please Hold or Time to Go.
You've reached Wingman Fantasy Football. Please hold. Yeah, we're going to have to let you go. So, just pack up your things and leave your key pass on the desk before you leave. Okay? Alright.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster.
All right, guys, we got some players here we're looking at, and most of these are it's going to be tough. Starting off here with Parker Washington. You're like, what? He just was a great streamer for me last week. Why would I drop him? Well, the only reason I would consider dropping him here is that we have Jacoby Myers coming over to Jacksonville. It's another receiver on the field. We've got Brian Thomas Jr., who is optimistically expected to be able to play this week. We'll see. And then we also have Travis Hunter, who they thought might be out for the year, is now looking like he might just miss those 4 games that he's already required to miss. He's already one's in the books, only 3 more weeks before he'll be able to return. With all that mess here, Parker Washington's shelf life is going to be 1 or 2 more weeks at max, in my opinion here. So unless you're going to play him this week or at least have him on your bench for an emergency play if some news doesn't break your way, his shelf life is coming to an end here, although he is kind of a target monster. You know what? We're going to wait and see how this shakes out with these injuries and or the acclimation of Jacoby Myers. For now, we are going to hold on to Parker Washington. Hold! Right, our next player here is Hollywood Brown. Since the suspension has ended for Rashee Rice, he's taking a back seat, and that makes sense, obviously. They're also on bye this week. That's the bigger question. Are we going to hold on to a player that has lost his spot on the field during a bye week when we have players that are hurt and we have a bye week we have to handle ourselves? Being that's the case, being that he's on bye, I'm going to let Hollywood Brown go.
It's time to go!
All right, so another player here is Calvin Ridley, another team who's on bye this week. He's been out due to injury for the last two games. Was it 2 or 3? At least 2 games here. He was hoping to get traded. I think that did not happen. So it kind of depends here. He's really not part of the plan. This offense is awful. Do you hold on to Calvin Ridley during the bye week? His name says yes. That's like I said, if you drop him, it's a sabotage drop. No one's going to trade for him if you trade for him this week during the bye. Maybe hold on to him, see what shakes out over the next couple of days or next week, this weekend, and put him in a trade package ASAP. I would find a way, one way or the other, to get rid of Calvin Ridley.
It's time to go!
In this one, guys, I need to ask you this. I don't know what to do here. I've got Brandon Ayuk. He was my IR stash, but now I've got 3 guys hurt, and he's taking up that spot, and we're not sure when he's going to come back at all. Do we hold on to him? He's really taking up some space on our team here. I'm trying to hold on to him a little bit. I want some clarity, and either I might need him depending on injuries, or I maybe can trade him with the buzz of him coming back. But there's no buzz, so I don't know what to do here, guys. At this point, I'd hate to hold on to him this long to have someone else pick him up for free. Just because of that sunk cost analysis here, or fallacy, I'm going to hold on to Brandon Ayuk. All right, guys, it's now time to take a look at this past week's Wingman Jam.
Wingman Fantasy Football.
Wingman Jam with Bernie the Bounty Hunter and Amazing Spidey. Boom shakalaka. Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, Lions and Tigers and Bears. Oh my. All right, we had an interdivisional rivalry this time as Bernie went with the Detroit Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Well, I went with Caleb Williams and the dark horse Kyle Monanga as we made this pick on Friday morning. And a huge score for the Bears as they came up with 59 points, our highest score of the year for the Wingman Jam, defeating Bernie's team here by over 40 points in a monster blowout.
That score is more embarrassing than when your uncle started twerking at the family picnic.
Spidey wins!
All right, we were not the only two players this week as we had another player join us from our audience here. We had Andrew F. join us once again, and he selected the Buffalo Bills with his combo of Josh Allen and James Cook. They got together for 41.82 points. A solid day, finishing in second place for this week. All right, with this week in the books, let's check in on the updated standings through Phase 3 and 2 weeks of Phase 3. Andrew F. remains on top, taking advantage of that rollover point. He's got 7 points with 3 games played, 2 second-place finishes. Bernie and I are tied in second at 6 points. We both have 2 games played and 1 first-place finish and 1 third-place finish. And Ken T still has a rollover point from week number 1 at 1 point. All right, don't forget, this is a game you guys can play as well with us. Just pick your NFL team and pick your offensive stack, and you can play against us to see who can win the Wingman Jam. This one's going to be close, guys. We're coming down to the last week, as every phase is 3 weeks, so we're going into our last week of phase number 3 with only a 1-point lead here for Andrew F. Will he be able to hold on and earn a seat into the Showcase Showdown in week 14? We shall see next week. All right, guys, it is now time to take a look at the Thursday night matchup where we preview the Thursday night game where the Las Vegas Raiders head over to Denver to take on the Broncos at 8:15 p.m. The over-under on this one is kind of a modest 42.5 points, but Denver is favored by a whopping 9 points. Oh my, oh my. How do we think this game is going to go here? As Denver is really a very good defense. We're not sure if Patrick Surtain's going to make it back. He is trending towards healing up here, but again, on the short week, that's the only indication. If they were playing Sunday, I would say Surtain is back. On Thursday, I can't make such a promise. All right, let's talk about how we think this game is going to go. You know me, I usually go with the under, but this is a very low-scoring game. I'm going with the over on this one. We're going to go over the 42.5 points. However, with that 9-point spread, I'm going to pick the Vegas Raiders to cover. However, Denver will win this one in another one-score game, and as they add another one-score victory to their ledger. All right, let's talk about our fantasy options in this game. We've got Geno Smith coming off his best game of the season. Are we willing to go back to that? I would say no. Let's see. What quarterbacks are we missing this week? I don't have the bye weeks memorized. We have, I know Kansas City's out, so that's a team that we're definitely going to miss this week. Give me a second to get that up as I talk about some of these other players here. So Geno Smith, I'm not looking to play, guys. He's a back-end streamer, and I'm really not looking to make that move this week. All right, who's on bye this week? Come on, load up for me, please. All right. Pardon me for that delay. All right, we have Cincinnati, so we have no Joe Flacco, who would be ahead of him. No Dak Prescott, who would be ahead of him. Tennessee, Cam Ward is not. And Kansas City, so we have Patrick Mahomes. So we have 3 players that would be above that streaming line are out. which means so now your guys who's a 14 moves up to about an 11. I'm still not looking to play Geno Smith because I think he's probably at best an 11 at this point. And honestly, I'm not too confident with that. All right, Ashton Genty. It's not a good matchup. I don't expect big numbers here, but you got to play him. And then Brock Bowers, with them losing Jacoby Myers, he already was the only thing in town, but he is now going to definitely be the only thing in town. He might not be very efficient, but he's probably going to get multiple catches in that 7 to 10 range, which will probably give him 50 yards or at least. So he'll probably be a decent play. Don't expect the 37 points that he had last week, though. Let's put it that way. Trey Tucker had some drops last week, so he didn't finish with a good game in terms of fantasy. But he's on the field all the time here. And again, with Jacoby Myers gone, I'm not looking to play him just because. But in terms of the team here, he's going to be one of their top receivers. But again, that's a tough matchup against the Denver Broncos. So I'm not looking to play any offensive players here except Genty and Bowers. All right, moving over to the Denver side of the ball here. Bo Nix, after a rocky start to start the year, really has been pretty good the last 4 or 5 weeks. If you've been playing in these last 3 or 4 weeks, there's no reason not to play him again. Again, with those top 3 quarterbacks out, it's arguable that he's ahead of 2 of those 3 in Dak Prescott and Joe Flacco. He's probably going to be a top 6 quarterback at worst this week. You're going to play Bo Nix. All right, now for the running backs here. This has been crazy. J.K. Dobbins gets all the carries. R.J. Harvey finds his way in the end zone. These guys both tend to get 9 to 14 points, minus some crazy game here. But it's really hard to trust either of them. R.J. Harvey only touched the ball 7 times last week, 2 rushes for 2 yards, and had like 3 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown. I don't know how he does it. If I would have played Harvey last week, I would have won. But I couldn't trust it, and it seemed like the right move. He only gets 5 or 6 touches a game, but he's very efficient. You're playing against the Raiders here. I'm looking for other options for both these guys, but I wouldn't be upset if you played either of them, as this is a decent matchup, and it is at home. I don't like Thursday players on Thursday games, but they do get a big bump if they're the power players on a home game. So these guys are your back end flexes. I'm not looking to put them as an RB2. I want to go that high. But if you play 1, 2, or 3 flexes, they're probably going to find your way as one of the last players on your starting lineup. Cortland Sutton is the man. He's their best player. He doesn't they kind of spread around which one's going to get the numbers here. He did have a good game last week, which means they rarely get 2 games in a row. But Cortland Sutton, he's kind of earned that right to be your last receiver, a receiver 3 or a low-end receiver 2. He's probably going to be in your lineup no matter what you do, unless you have some awesome options. And again, we're without Rashee Rice this week, George Pickens. We're without CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, and we're without T. Higgins. Yeah, Cortland Sutton's going to be in your lineup this week. Troy Franklin, again, we're not sure about Mims. He's trending towards coming back here, obviously. So this makes our next group here. These are our flexes. Troy Franklin, who's been up and down, had some good games. He's been startable. He's just not consistent. And Pat Bryant has had a moment or two. You could see it. He's close to breaking out here, but he's not quite. He's still behind all these other players in Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims. Honestly, I think Franklin is probably as even as Harvey, for example, as your last flex. I'm not looking to play him. There's no harm in putting him in your lineup here. Again, Thursday night's the tiebreaker here. I'm not for receiving game. I'm not looking to put a receiver in on Thursday night in a flex. The running backs, however, I'm more willing to do so. All right, guys, good luck with your players in that Thursday night game. There's not a lot of great options here. I guess just the must starts I got here is Bo Nix, Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, and Cortland Sutton. You can play R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins as low RB2s to medium flexes, and Troy Franklin is probably a low flex. All right, guys, I want to thank you all so very much for joining me for this week's Rewind. I hope you guys fare better than I did this past week. Man, I'm kicking myself. All right, if you want to find our audio feeds, you can find us on most podcasting platforms out there, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, the iHeartRadio, and the Odyssey app. Just search Wingman the League, and we'll come to the top of your search. While you're there, guys, do me the favor. Go ahead and leave a comment. Give us a 5-star rating and all that good stuff. If you want to see our bar room, we've got some new decorations for the Thanksgiving holiday. Sorry for having that little smoke bomb stuck there for a minute. You can see that as well if you want. It's kind of fun to see all of our mistakes. It's a little bit of a drinking game. See a mistake or a mispronounced name, you take a drink. All right. You can find our YouTube channel at wingmanfantasyfootball.com/YouTube or at youtube.com/@wingmanfantasyfootball. When you head over there, guys, do me that favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and go ahead and leave a comment and let us know which Wingman Jam teams you want to select. Put any comments in there, and we'll read you into our next mailbag segment. If you've got any fantasy court questions, if you have anything going wrong in your league and you need someone to help you arbitrate these misunderstandings, we're here to help with that as well. All right, guys, with that being said, may your glasses be full, your mugs stay frosty, and we will see you next time.